Hello, this is David King of singleadultministry.uk. Welcome to our author podcast. In these podcasts, we give the opportunity to an author or speaker to share an inspirational thought of their own choice and in their own words. May you be inspired and encouraged by what you hear.
Hello, my name is Dominique Anderson and I am the author of the little book with my big thoughts and also an intensive care sister in London. This podcast will be entitled The Wait is Long, but I'm sure it is worth the wait. I will start off by reading a page out of my book, which will also go into the importance of the rest of the podcast, which will look into the story of Ruth. A part of my book is called He Waited. He waited. It is not good for man to be alone. I will make you a helper suitable for him. He who finds a wife finds what is good. You waited for me, Lord, to acknowledge my beauty. You waited for me, Lord, to know my worth. You waited for me to know that I am the head and not the tail. You waited for me to know that who you created was just who you intended me to be. You waited for me to understand that the hurtful process was just that, a process that would not last forever. You waited for me to cry tears of victory, even though I never knew that it was victory I was crying for. I thought I was crying from hurt, but I was crying my breakthrough into existence. But you knew who I would become, so you waited for me to see what was within me. You waited for me to see my potential and not the problem that lay before me, of my insecurities, hate, discomfort, and unworthiness. But you waited until all of these insecurities no longer existed. I won't go through the whole page because I want to delve into the chapter of Ruth, and we're looking at all the chapters in Ruth. As I wrote the page in my book about He Waited, it made me wonder why God hadn't supplied me with the things that I longed for, the things that my heart desired. And some of the things were a dream job, a dream house, and obviously, of course, the dream husband that us as women, or I can only speak for myself, we always desire to be married or have that companion that we join in marriage with and have that relationship with. And as I wrote the page, I said to God, why have you not supplied me with these things? And God sat me down one day and he says, Dominique, it's not that I don't want to supply them to you, but I want you to understand the depths of the things that you have inside of you, so that you don't just give 50%, but you will give 100%, that you will give your all. And it reminds me that sometimes we pick some things up in the shop and we think about, do I have enough money to buy all of these things? And sometimes we only have £5, and sometimes we've picked up the things that cost us £10, and we have to say, you know what, I can't buy all these things because I don't have enough. And what God was trying to say to me is, you want all these things, but yet you haven't gained what I need you to have in order to be successful when you do gain these things. So I'm glad that God didn't supply me with all the things because I wouldn't have been ready for them. But God knew the potential that was inside of me before I was conceived in my mother's womb. And I know that He will grant my heart's desires once I have gained everything that He knows I need in order to be successful. So looking at the story and the chapters of Ruth, I looked at that Ruth had lost her husband. And her mother-in-law also lost her sons and her husband. And obviously one of the sons was Ruth's husband. And the mother-in-law's name was Naomi. And Naomi decided, since she had lost everything, that she would travel back to the place where she once lived. And unfortunately, when she left that place was, they said it was desolate, meaning there was nothing there. There was nothing growing. There was no harvest, nothing to help them live or survive. There was no food, hence the reason why they left. And we would ask the question of why Naomi would go back to a place where she remembers it to not have anything. But Naomi wanted to go back to the place that she knew anyway. And I thought it was very interesting when I sat down that Ruth said, I'm coming with you, Naomi. I'm not going to leave you. And Ruth said, I'm going to stay by your side. And Naomi said, no, go back to your family. And Ruth said, no, I'm going to come with you. And what I like about this story is Ruth didn't think about her own gains or her own thoughts, but she wanted to serve and she wanted to look after Naomi. And I'm sure Naomi looked after her at a point in time of their lives together. And Ruth said, I'm not going to be selfish. I'm just going to help you the best way I can, and I'm going to come with you. So they both went back on the journey, back to the place where Naomi once lived. And what I love about this story is it said that Ruth and Naomi returned in a harvest season. So after everything Naomi and Ruth had lost, they were actually returning to a place where crops were growing. There was a lot of things growing, which meant that they would be able to survive, and the place was flourishing. And I believe that God allowed Naomi and Ruth to return in a harvest season to give them a bit of hope of what was to come. And I think God does that to us a little bit. He gives us a little bit of a glimpse of what's ahead of us, but he doesn't fully show us the full picture. But we know from that little glimpse of hope that he is going to supply way much more than what we would have thought. So Ruth said, instead of me sitting down and not doing anything, I'm going to go and find some work so that I can help you, so that we can eat and so that we can prosper. And the place where Ruth went to go and work, there was this handsome young man, without me going into the full story, there was this handsome young man. And but I know in these days, and I could speak for myself, I would say, well, that's my husband. And I know Ruth, she may not have thought that, but she said, I'm here to work and I'm here to serve. And one day she decides, I'm going to go and serve Boaz and I'm going to sleep on the floor. And they called it the threshing floor. And what they were trying to say, there was still a lot of wheat on the ground. So you can imagine it being really dirty. And these days, I know we just want to sleep on a memory foam mattress. But Ruth said, no, it's fine. I'm going to sleep on the floor. And however I can serve you, I'm going to serve to the best of my ability. And Ruth served Boaz, and Boaz actually sent her back to her mother-in-law with some food so that they could eat. And that was his way of saying thank you. Now, the gist of the story, or the long and short of the story, Ruth and Boaz ended up getting married. And I really believe that Ruth may not have had it in her thoughts of this is going to be my husband, but maybe deep down her desire was that. And she didn't know by leaving what she knew and following Naomi that this would be her story. She may have given up, or she may have thought this is the end of the end. There's no luck for me now. But God is not a God of luck. God is not slack concerning his promises for you. And he will supply all things that are in his will for your life. And I want you to know that sometimes we're wanting these things, but God says that one little thing that you need to learn from me, you've chosen not to learn. And that is the thing that can help you to get to the next destination, the next step. And God's saying, I'm not denying it to you, but I'm just saying I'm delaying it until you have learned that thing. That one little thing can help you in the next step of your life, in the next step of your relationship, in the next step of your job, in the next step of a friendship. And God is saying, lean on me and not your own understanding, because he will supply everything in his time. And I just want to leave you with that. Have faith and know that God will supply it. The wait may be long, but I'm sure it's worth the wait. Goodbye from me, and God bless you.